All right, this video focuses on the Second Amendment, and you obviously don't need me to tell you that the Second Amendment, if it's not the most controversial amendment found within the Bill of Rights, obviously it's right up there. This is currently at the forefront of debates between individuals, divisions between political parties. Obviously, this is a hot button, polarizing issue in the United States now, and it has been for a while. So the Second Amendment obviously protects the right to bear arms, and again, part of the controversy, the argument over the Second Amendment is really like the vague wording of the amendment itself. So it reads a well regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So constitutional scholars, regular citizens, politicians have long since argued what the meaning of that very complicated wording is. Some argue that that amendment provides the right to bear arms to a well-regulated militia only, and others argue that that amendment should be interpreted to provide an individual with the right to bear arms. And clearly, there's little agreement between the two sides. So, in terms of the Supreme Court weighing in on this, um, really, it's not until 2008. So, in the grand scheme of American history, we're not talking about that long ago, that the Supreme Court kind of weighed in with the argument over like the wording and how it should be interpreted. So in 2008, the Supreme Court heard a case called District of Columbia versus Heller, and this involved an individual, Heller, basically suing the District of Columbia, Washington D.C., in which Washington D.C. Basically had a ban on handgun ownership within its city limits because of gun violence that it had been experiencing for a couple decades at that point. And it wasn't until the ruling in this case, in which in this ruling, the Supreme Court clarified that the way that this wording should be interpreted is that it does indeed protect an individual's right to own a gun. Like this is the first time really the Supreme Court has said like no, like an individual has the right to own a gun. It was a close decision. It was 5-4. It was largely along partisan lines. But this is the current interpretation of the Supreme Court as per the District of Columbia's ruling. So there are individuals that disagree with it. There are individuals that support it. But right now, the current court's interpretation for a decade plus has been that it does protect an individual's right to own a gun. Obviously, we continue to debate as a society what regulations are able to be put in place without violating the Supreme Court's ruling, what kind of restrictions, background checks, and assault weapon bans, and all sorts of things that have been like coming up in like the last several decades. That we argue about as a society. But again, it's important to note that the Supreme Court's current position on this is that the Second Amendment does protect an individual's right to own a gun.